you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. We are the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. This episode is no exception, although one of the guests, I didn't even realize who it was in the beginning, and then I do, and then I think you'll find that quite entertaining. Today, we will review both the Pro Wrestling This Week program, which aired on 1440 WNYG in Babylon, New York, and also the Pro Wrestling Spotlight Show, which aired on WEVD in New York City, 1050 on the dial. And those broadcasts were from March the 20th, 1993. I do want to plug our Patreon account where all this vintage audio is housed, all the uncut Pro Wrestling Spotlight archives, the episodes that date back, 33 years now, from April 9th, 1989, right through present day. And there's more shows that are added each and every week. We just got a new lot of vintage WWF TV shows from 1975, 76. We'll be putting some of that up. And of course, there's so many other benefits of being a patron. We're doing another Patreon Zoom get-together. We have just incredible content. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. $5 a month gets you in the door. And there are other tiers based on how extensive you want to go into the archives to see 8mm films, get vintage wrestling magazines, appear on this program if you're in the producer or executive producer level. Go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. Check it out, and you may find a level that's suitable for you. But for $5 a month, you get an incredible amount of content if you just want to come in and hear all of these old shows uncut, unedited. And also, you get this podcast several days early. You get our video podcast several days early. And you do get a chance to hear all of these shows in their entirety. If you're in the market for some vintage wrestling stuff, go to ebay.com/Matt Memories and see the items I have listed there. I found some really cool stuff that's up on the eBay page right now, including I put up some photographs from the October 1995 IWAS AAA ECW co-promoted show. A lot of backstage pose shots of the stars that were on that show. There's also an original ticket stub there. There's other wrestling items that I put up all the time. Some vintage wrestling magazines are now up there. So go to ebay.com, look for Matt Memories, and check out some of the stuff that I have up there. Not just wrestling, but Beatles stuff, Kiss autograph photos. And we did sell the premiere one, the one that was signed by all four members of the group in 1976. So that one got bought up this past week. Anyway, lots of cool stuff there, concert photos, and much, much more. I also want to remind everybody that, and we're going to bring on a special guest here in just a minute, 80's Wrestling Con 4 is taking place in New Jersey, and that'll be at the Men in Sports Arena, Morristown, New Jersey, on Saturday, May the 6th. Doors open 11 a.m. I will be there, and I will have a table set up. I'll have books there, some posters, some T-shirts. Thinking of bringing some vintage wrestling photographs from the Garden from the 1970s. So that's on Saturday, May the 6th. It's promoted by my dear friend Tommy Fierro. And why don't we do this? Why don't we bring on Tommy and discuss 80's WrestleCon and also how we met several years ago when he was a teenager, way back in the day. He was a listener of this program on the radio. He went to my conventions, and then at 16 years old, he decided to do his own. So we'll get that story from Tommy. Let's bring him on right now. We want to bring on a very special guest on this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast, somebody that I've known for many, many years. I guess when he was just a teenager back in the day. I want to welcome the promoter of WrestleCon 4 and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Tommy Fierro. Tommy, how you doing?
Hey, John, how are you, sir? Thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited about the upcoming WrestleCon 4. I want to go back in time with you. And your memory is probably better than mine as I get older in years. When did we first connect?
I would say originally would be I went to your last couple of conventions you promoted in New York. That was before I really knew you. At the time, I was an avid listener of your radio show, and obviously that's how I found out about your convention. So when I went to your first convention, I believe it was the one with, I want to say it was Larry Sabisco and Bruno Sammartino when they were united. That was, I believe, the first one I went to. And
yeah, that was in 1992.
Yes, yeah, that was the first one I went to. So like when I walked in there, like I had no idea about like a wrestling convention or newsletters or anything like that back in the day. Like I was just starting to learn. Like this was like a brand new world to me. So like when I walked in to your convention, I was like a kid in a candy store on Christmas morning. I mean, everywhere you turned and looked, there was people selling wrestling T-shirts, magazines, action figures, tables of wrestlers signing autographs and taking pictures, different wrestling promotions. I remember you had the 1-2-3 Kid was there, just as the independent guy at the time, the Lightning Kid. He had a table. I remember Metal Maniac. Like so, it was like local independent, the Power Twins. There was like local independent talents at the tables as well. So it was like super cool. So like through going to your first couple conventions, I heard about a local wrestling radio show in New Jersey called Who's Slamming Who. It was on Wednesday nights on my local college radio station. I overheard two kids talking about it, and it was that night, and I listened to it, and then there was a contest to be the special guest co-host. I entered that and won that. So I went on Who's Slamming Who as a guest co-host for the week. And this is where I found out about your convention and your radio shows. Like everything came from there. So like then, listening to that, I started my own wrestling newsletter. I was 15 at the time, called Ringside Wrestling Newsletter. And I would go around to local independent shows, whether it be Saboldi's or Dennis Corluzzo's, and I would, interview different guys for my newsletter. And
you were 15 years old.
Yes, yeah, I was 15, and then when I went to your convention, I already had numbers from interviewing people for my newsletter, and I was cool with Cousin Luke at the time. And as you know, Cousin Luke lived in Jersey. He was booking a lot of the legend guys at the time, so he helped me out. Like the first convention I did, I was 16 years old. I remember it was December of 1993, and now listen, obviously I absolutely 150% stole your concept. I tried to do it in New Jersey. Now, here's how great you are. A lot of people don't know. Now, I'm a 16-year-old kid. No one has even heard of me before. And you were kind enough to have me on your radio show to promote the convention idea that I took from you, having it in New Jersey. I'm 16 years old. I have no idea what I'm doing whatsoever. It's something I never forget, John, because obviously, since then I've went on to promote many wrestling conventions, and it all started and stemmed from going to your convention. Anytime I talk to anyone, I always, let them know that you're the originator of it. And I do say that you're one of my mentors, because if it wasn't for you doing those conventions, man, like, I don't know if I would have had an avenue to get into the wrestling business. So I forever indebted to you and grateful.
Not a problem. I was impressed with you back then. And you said the very first one was in 1993. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, the first one was in December of 1993. Now, the second one I did, and that first one, by the way, I admit it drew like 150 people. I remember I made $200 on it, and I was super excited that I made $200 on a convention. And the next one was July of 94. That was the second one I did. Now, this one was a lot bigger. I remember hooking up with, and you're a New York guy, so you might even remember this. It was a wrestling remember back then, like the wrestling hotlines were extremely popular, especially in the New York area. You would call up and get your news every day. And it was a gentleman by the name of Felipe Martinez Jr., his name was. I forgot the name of the hotline he had, but it was extremely popular. And I linked up with him to promote the convention in New Jersey. Now, the cool thing was that there was a WWF show at the Meadowlands, and I actually went to there, and it was like a week before the convention. And even though I was only 17 at the time, I was smart enough to go there and put flyers on every car in the entire parking lot that was at WWF that night. And sure enough, it worked. And that convention drew like 1,000 people.
Amazing.
And it was awesome. And the cool thing is at this convention was Dennis Corluzzo, who at the time was one of, if not the biggest independent wrestling promoter in the United States. And when he found out that a 17-year-old kid just promoted this convention, obviously he grabbed me and took me under his wing. So like at that time also is when they had that NWA title tournament where Shane Douglas threw the belt on the ground, and, and Dennis had to put together a new tournament to crown a new champion, which was Candido. But he wanted to do a convention in the afternoon because he was bringing all the guys from Smoky Mountain and all that stuff. So like he asked me, he's like, "Listen, I'm doing an NWA title tournament. I want you to run the convention from the afternoon," and I did, and it was really good. And then I don't think a lot of people know this, but I was the guy that actually ran the Eddie Gilbert Memorial conventions, and then Dennis did the show at nighttime. But I was the one that ran those conventions.
Oh, awesome!
So I was involved with a lot of stuff with Dennis, and then eventually. I broke off in 1998 because I was at this point I was doing a lot of independent shows too, but I was doing them under the NWA banner. And then in '98 I switched over because I wanted to start my own promotion, which was ISPW, and then that was that. But that's how that's the pretty much is just the story of how I got involved in the wrestling business.
Yeah, you for many years were promoting, and then you took a hiatus, like sometimes we all do from the business. I know I've left it 3 times, and you came back with a vengeance, really. And I believe that your first 80s Wrestle convention, 80s WrestleCon, 80s Wrestling Con, I was at that one in 2019. And you really have taken off since then to do some amazing things, bringing back ISPW, promoting these large conventions now once again. And I won't ever forget you because I was just kind of dipping my toe back in 2000 and late 2018, early 2019, and saw that you were running a show. We got a hold of each other. You brought me in, had a table set up, and that was before my book even, and you presented me with an award, and that was amazing for me, and I want to thank you for that because you didn't forget, even though, years later, what did I do? I helped a young kid help promote his convention by bringing him on my radio show, and you were influenced by the Weekend of Champions, but your passion for the business has always been there.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And yeah, and that's the thing you just said. That's I'll elaborate now. So you said about me taking a hiatus from wrestling. I did. I was actually the marketing director for the restaurant California Pizza Kitchen.
Yep.
For all their stores in New York and New Jersey, which was awesome. I loved the job. It was super cool. I set up a lot of fundraiser events for the stores for raise money for local, different nonprofit organizations in their area. So the job was cool. So like it was too much work to do that and run wrestling stuff at the same time. So I still wanted to feel like I was some way, somehow connected to the business. So just for the hell of it, I opened up a social media account called 80's Wrestling. And I did that on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And what I would do, I would just simply, post pictures and memories and some thoughts from, back in the day, just so I could some way, somehow feel like I was still connected to the business. And through that, man, like The Rock started following me, Hulk Hogan started following me, Stone Cold Steve Austin started following me, Jericho follows me, Edge, Randy Orton, like almost every big name in the business follows one of these accounts that I have. So, it got to the point where, right now, between all my accounts, I have over 1 million followers. But back then in 2019, I was gaining a ton of followers. And I said to myself, I would be stupid if I didn't take advantage of this following I have and try and capitalize on it and think of something to do, with it. So, like, I had, tons of experience already running conventions. So I'm like, well, why not an 80s wrestling convention? You look back at the history of wrestling conventions, it hasn't been done before. So I did it in 2019. This was just be a one-off, the one you were at. And that meant a lot for me also, by the way, to give you that award, because like I said, I'll never forget how great you are to have me on your radio show and your nationally broadcasted radio show. 6-year-old kid had absolutely no clue whatsoever, pretty much copying a very poor version of your amazing concept. So I always appreciate that. But I was 2019 one was supposed to be like a one and done, and I had a really good turnout. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to do it again. So I did a second one, and that one was really good as well. I'm like, well, I guess I got to do it again. So then I had a third one booked, and obviously the pandemic hit, and they got postponed. And then I get, furloughed from my job, and then, 6 months go by, waiting to go back to work. They tell us we're going back, and then they wind up, getting rid of, over half of the corporate office, and I was one of the cuts they made. So at first I thought I had no problem whatsoever getting another job. I could put on my resume that, I was the marketing director for a national brand. And I sent out like 100 resumes to different companies. I didn't hear nothing back from anyone. So now I'm like, getting shit in my pants. I'm like, well, what am I going to do here? So I said to my wife, well, how about I go to real estate school? Because I knew someone that did it. They were making money. And she says, all right, go to real estate school. So as I'm going to real estate school, I begin doing my virtual signings because of this following I have on social media with 80's Wrestling. And I saw a local bookstore was posting something about they were doing a virtual book signing. So when I saw that, man, it really caught my attention. I'm like, well, damn, I have this following here on my social media. So I started doing virtual signings, and they did really, really good. To the point where I said to my wife, I said, listen, I think that we should go with wrestling. Now I'm in real estate school. As I say this to her now, never in a million years, John, did I ever think my wife would say, okay, go with wrestling. And she did, because she saw I was hustling. I was making money. And she said, okay, go for it. And that was shocking. When she said that, man, I never even called the school back and told them I wasn't coming. I just had to stop showing up. And I just started doing more signings. And then I've always wanted to open up a wrestling store. So I said to her, well, if I'm going to do this, how about if I have a wrestling store, I have a place to work at as my office too. And again, she said, go for it. And that, if it wasn't for her saying to go for it, I never would have wound up doing it. So, yeah, man, I went for it. And then I haven't been looking back since. And, like you said, I brought back ISPW. We got tons of shows lined up right now. I got, 5 shows lined up for May. I got 4 already lined up for June. We're doing fundraisers, a lot of them for various different organizations in New Jersey, whether it be, schools or fire departments, the youth baseball team, youth football team, churches, stuff like that. So we're doing a lot of fundraiser events right now too. So yeah, man, I'm just grinding, my man.
Yeah, you are. Absolutely. And the Wrestling Collector, which I was at, and it's a really cool place. So many wrestling items, from thousands of magazines to action figures to autographed memorabilia. I mean, it's just a cool place, not too far from Manhattan, in Jersey, and it's a wonderful store to visit, and you do a lot of signings there as well. I remember your second convention because that's when you had Bob Backlund there, and you gave me the opportunity to interview Bob, which was one of the most unique interviews I've ever done. And that was a lot of fun. He stood on his head and he collected his shoes and wouldn't take questions and ran out. So, I mean, it was just it was Bob, and it was great. So you and I have this history, and I totally respect everything you do and the following you've built and the events you run. And now, the first weekend of May is coming up. 80's Wrestling Con #4 with an array of talent that really has been unsurpassed when it comes to events that you might have done previously, I think. I mean, it's just a loaded show.
Thank you, John. This one's headlined by Bret the Hitman Hart. And, being in New Jersey, you don't get to see certain guys on a regular basis of this. For like the Beverly Brothers, I have them on this one. Like, that's a rare one for those guys to be up here. Nikita Koloff and Magnum TA. I mean, that's their NWA guys. It's rare to have them up here. I'm bringing up the original Midnight Express. That's another rare one that those guys aren't really up here. Dory Funk hasn't been up this way in a very long time. They haven't been coming up. So, like, once you start, especially like this is the 4th 80's Wrestling Con, like, eventually I'm going to run out of 80's guys to use. I mean, I'm going to use a couple of these guys on past conventions as they are. But what I try and do, much like you did back in the day, John, like you did little activities, throughout your convention. Like I remember you used to do the auction, and Cornette would host that, and you would have the show at night. That's like different things. So, like, I want it to be more of an experience and an autograph session. So, like, we have a ton of different things planned for this, including the Kids of 80's Wrestling question and answer panel. They're going to be the sons and daughters of some of the most famous wrestlers of all time that are no longer with us. Like, for example, Andre the Giant's daughter is going to be there. Big Boss Man's daughter is going to be there. Earthquake's son's going to be there. Nikolai Volkov's son is going to be there, and a few more also. So that's going to be really neat and different. Something cool. We're doing. You can draw a picture with Tony Atlas. A lot of people know Tony Atlas is an artist. So
yes.
You can have we're going to have a drawing class at 80's Wrestling Con with Tony Atlas. We're doing 80's Wrestling Karaoke. Sing your favorite 80's Wrestling theme song in front of everyone at 80's Wrestling Con. We got Pro Wrestling Jeopardy. We're going to have an 80's Wrestling Jeopardy game along with an 80's Wrestling Family Feud game. And I think you would be a perfect guy to be on that. We may have to talk about that off the air.
Okay. And I'm open to whatever. I mean, I'm just happy to be a part of it and to be there. I'm excited for it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, for those out there who want to come in for this event, whether they're listening locally to this or we have international reach, obviously, with this show, and all across the United States. Why don't you let everybody know how they can get more information about 80's Wrestling Con #4?
Sure. You can just head over to 80'swrestlingcon.com. That's 80s wrestlingcon.com. All the information's on there as far as all the different activities we're doing and the most current up-to-date list of wrestlers that are appearing there. And at the show at nighttime, immediately following 80's Wrestling Con, we're doing a big show, a big ISW Rock and Wrestling show, which is going to include Val Venus against Carlito. It's going to be Fandango against Eugene. The Powers of Pain are going to reunite and wrestle at the show at nighttime. So we got a lot of really cool stuff planned for the night show as well. So and that lineup is on the website as well. Again, you can head over to 80'swrestlingcon.com and check that out.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone should go check it out. And I would certainly love to see as many people who are old listeners of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight radio show and listeners to this podcast. So that'll be a lot of fun. And also let everybody know where the Wrestling Collector is located in case anyone wants to drop by and say hello.
Yes, sir. The Wrestling Collector is located right on Route 23 in Stockholm, New Jersey. It's about 30 minutes north of Wayne, New Jersey. So you take 23 north all the way up, about a half hour past Wayne, New Jersey. It's in Stockholm, New Jersey, the Wrestling Collector. And right now we're open 7 days a week. And we have a old school WWF WrestleFest arcade game in too. So a lot of people like to come in and play that. Well, you said, man, we have thousands of pro wrestling magazines, hundreds of the old Coliseum videos, a ton of LJN figures still brand new in the box, hundreds of DVDs, T-shirts, cards. Pretty much, it looks like if you threw up on Christmas morning when you were in the 80s, early 90s. That's what it would look like.
Yeah.
All old stuff, a lot of vintage stuff. It's real cool.
Well, very, very cool, Tommy. I mean, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and it's always a pleasure to communicate with you. And I look forward to seeing you at this huge event that's taking place. Is it May the 5th or 6th? That's the weekend, right?
Yeah, May the 6th.
May the 6th on a Saturday.
You probably have May 5th on your head because that's when you're flying in for the exclusive party that we're having.
Yeah, I'm flying in, actually. I'm flying in on the Thursday, and we'll be heading up to Jersey on Friday afternoon. And any party that you're throwing, I'd love to be a part of, believe me.
Awesome, man. Hey, listen, it means a lot to me that you're going to be there, and it also means a lot to me to talk to you on here again. I'll never forget, me being a clueless 6-year-old kid, pretty much, a poor man's version of your concept. You were nice enough to have me on your show, and I'll never forget that, man. I really, 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 really appreciate it. It meant a lot to me. And a lot of stuff cooking, man. Now we got ISW, got the Wrestling Collector, 80's Wrestling Con, a off-Broadway musical, the Last Match musical.
That's right.
A lot of stuff, man. So
well, you keep him busy, man, and our relationship goes back 30 years, and it's been a great one, even after all the years passed where we didn't even communicate with each other. And it's always a pleasure to see you, talk to you, and be a part of anything that you do. And we'd love to bring you back sometime.
Thank you very much, Sean. I appreciate you very much, man.
All righty. Thank you. My dear friend Tommy Fierro, and I look forward to 80's Wrestling Con in New Jersey on Saturday, May the 6th. But anyway, let's get to covering history. Let's get to covering March the 20th, 1993. I want to bring on Marsh and get this soiree started. Marsh, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm excited for you to do the con. And I was also shocked when I saw that ticket, the AAA ticket you put on eBay. That was the one you showed on the show when we had Conan on just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it is. And here's the deal with that. There are only 2 of those in existence. I'm keeping one, and this was the extra one.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's up there. And there's only 2 in existence. So and the photos that are up there are just kind of incredible. I mean, they're Donnie Liable was there with me, and he took a ton of photographs. So, as I go through all these archives and I figure what is good to keep, what is not, what would fans enjoy, based on from my personal collection, I felt that ticket stub, because that show was so good, and it was probably the best show people have never seen. Thanks to WWE, they have it in their archives. I would love to see it, but anyway, it was a special show. Own a piece of that history. So that's on eBay.com.
That was even the one that when I pulled up trying to find out about it, all I could find was that they had done a co-promotion, but I couldn't find a day or a date or who was on it. Just that ECW and AAA did an event together one time. So the fact that you have that up there, that's already more than Wikipedia knows,
Yeah, pretty much. And it was a fantastic show. It was also featured in one of the George Napolitano wrestling magazines, and so photographs are in that issue from years and years ago. But I also put up some other Lucha stuff. I promoted several shows back in 95, 96 with them. So I had some posters, some ticket stubs. So it's all up there on eBay. Awesome. But anyway, Wrestling Con for May 6th. Can't wait to be there. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a cool event.
I looked to see if I'd be able to go just because of seeing the event that you were telling me about and seeing the card. I was like, that's actually something I would like to check out. It's a day that I can't go because I have tickets to another event, but it's really cool and really exciting. And I'm glad you're going to be there. And I think everyone should come on out.
Talk to your friend Medusa. Well, you already are booked. So, I mean, anyway, I'm holding it up for the people who are watching this on YouTube. She sent me a copy of the book. The book is The Woman Who Would Be King, the Medusa story, Deborah Michelli and Greg Oliver. Forward by Paul Heyman.
Yep.
So it makes me kind of proud in a way, when she started talking about writing a book, and I reached out to Michael Holmes at ECW Press, and he certainly had immediate interest, and then hooked her up with Greg, and they clicked. And before you know it, here you are. A book is out. So, that's kind of cool. And
Did you
I
get
think
one
it's
of
gonna do
the
really well.
Did you get one of the bookmarks in there? There was a limited run of bookmarks she made.
No.
All right. Those
She
are
did
probably
sign it
getting-
for me. She wrote a really nice inscription in the book, and
That's cool.
this is going to go. This is going to be, something that I say for a long, long time. I mean, it just looked great. The pictures, everything in the book is great, and that's coming out.
Fantastic.
I believe the official date is what? The last week of March, right?
That was the official release date. However, Amazon started kicking up those pre-orders. So anyone who had already pre-ordered it most likely already has it. So even though the official release date is not even met yet,
Yeah,
they're in hand. They got them.
Awesome. So go to Amazon.com and just search for The Woman Who Would Be King, the Medusa story.
Yeah.
And it's a nice hardcover. And
It's
with
really
all
cool.
the people that commented about it, and Billy Corrigan, Mick Foley, and the forward by Paul Heyman is really cool.
It's really cool. You can also go to Medusa.com. I think it's the first link up on her site.
Okay.
So, to make it easy for people too.
And,
but yeah, and
we'll be
you
bringing
guys
her
go
on
back
here soon, right?
Yes, because you got an interview coming up in just a few weeks, because your guys' relationship goes back 30 years as well, at least.
Yes. April the 10th, 1993, she made her first appearance on Pro Wrestling Spotlight. So we're going to be targeting her to come on in and around that broadcast.
Yeah, I can't wait. I get so excited when these people get to hear themselves 30 years ago.
Yes.
It's
Well, we were hoping to do that today.
Yes.
We were hoping to do that today because Diamond Dallas Page appears on this show, and it was his first appearance ever on the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. And I was like, I really should, because it was, listening back on it, it was really good. It was really kind of like early DDP. His career was just really starting. I had, was getting him hooked up with my IWAS tour. He had befriended Jake Roberts. Jake insisted that he come on the IWS tour, Southeast Asia, to be his babysitter. And then we were also in discussions with DDP about the AAA that we were putting together, because Jake was going to be the heel, American heel. And, of course, he wanted DDP there. So there was a lot, when I reached out to him, I'd gotten his phone number and gave him a nice text, called him. The voicemail was full, but texted him, sent him a couple of links to the show, and nothing back.
Yeah.
It was read, but nothing back. So thank you, DDP. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, you can't get them all. And it was your pleasure, right?
It was my pleasure.
That's his old thing. He'll do it
in
this interview too. You'll hear it.
I don't think he ever liked me anyway.
Yeah, but
I really don't.
Fun dynamic.
I mean, even when we were in Southeast Asia, when I did, Bruce Jacobs and I were doing the ring announcing, and every time I'd introduce him, he'd come into the ring and he'd push me down on the mat hard. And I was a big, big boy back then. So it was never really pleasant dealing with him and Jake together.
I like the idea too, the hey, bring DDP because he'll be my babysitter and make it easier to deal with. And he made it more difficult to deal with, just in a different way.
Because DDP followed Jake's lead.
Yeah,
I did have a big problem because we did in the venue in Manila, in the Philippines, we were asked to do a double shot, afternoon show, matinee, and an evening show. And I had negotiated good rates for these guys, and they had gotten paid and all of that. And they were like, they wanted extra money to do the second show. And like, no, that just is not the way it works. And they were pretty pissed off about it. But, I was also a promoter who, you could always sense when you want to suck the blood out of somebody. So, I was a newbie promoter, really, other than my conventions. These were the first wrestling matches I was promoting.
Yeah.
But you learn, and he was a good worker, man, on the show.
Yeah.
He was really just coming into his own. So I have to say that about him.
Yeah.
But Jake, and I was going to reach out to Jake because he's coming up in a couple of weeks here. We get into a lot about Jake in the next few weeks, but I decided against that. I don't think that'll be pleasant.
It's tough to say. Sometimes, it's like, we still hear it. There seems to be two Jakes. You just don't know which one you're going to get. And maybe he would listen to it and tell a really nice, inspiring story about how he wishes he was never like that. Or maybe he comes on and says, yeah, no, that's the way it is, and be mean again. So you just don't know. So probably safe just to avoid.
Yeah.
But let's get through some of these things, because I do want us to get to the DDP clips, because I do think it was pretty interesting. Given in light, like, where he was in this clip 30 years ago, like, for you to give him the airtime, I thought was really nice to begin with. So,
Yeah.
but let's start it off with something simple and something classic: the Donnie Libel capsule.
We have Don Libel on the telephone with us, direct from upstate New York. And Donnie, are you there? Hello.
Surprises.
Donnie, yes, you got to start over again.
It's not snowing here. That's a great surprise. But we've had a few surprises in wrestling this week. One inside the ring, one outside the ring, and I'm sure maybe by this evening's show there'll be more to report on.
Yes.
So lots of things going on. So let's get right to the capsule. First off, a few names have been confirmed for the April 2nd planned Kerry Von Erich Family Benefit Show in Dallas Sportatorium. Brothers Steve and Sean Simpson will once again work as a team, as well as a reunion of two of the three fabulous Freebirds. Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts have agreed to appear on the card. Terry Gordy, the third Freebird, is scheduled to appear in Japan at the time of the benefit. And the man formerly known as the Ultimate Warrior is expected also to appear on the show. And speaking of the Warrior, he has dropped his lawsuit against Titan Sports. The much ballyhooed anticipated court case involving potentially many of the game's biggest names won't be taken any further, due in part to the Warrior not believing the law firm in which he was involved with wouldn't put the necessary time into pursuing it due to his attorney leaving the firm. And after winning the World Championship Wrestling Heavyweight belt from Big Van Vader in London, England on March 11th, Sting lost the title back to Vader this past week on March 17th in Dublin, Ireland on St. Patrick's Day during the promotion's European tour. And on the May 23rd WCW pay-per-view Slamboree, which will feature numerous grappling old-timers, you can count on seeing Dusty Rhodes and Wahoo McDaniel taking on Blackjack Mulligan and Ole Anderson. And keeping track of the WrestleMania 9 lineup, add the Nasty Boys versus the Beverly Brothers to the show. And after a tryout at the last World Wrestling Federation TV tapings, the Night Stalker, most recently with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, is reported to have signed a contract with the promotion. Curtis Hughes, billed as Mr. Hughes, while with WCW, also was given a tryout on the same tapings. Down south in Dothan, Alabama, the fledgling USA Championship Wrestling saw their first light heavyweight champion crowned. In the title tournament's final round, Scott Armstrong pinned Joey Maggs. And from the Can You Lend Me a Few Bucks department, Joyce Farhat, wife of the original Sheik, Ed Farhat, recently won $5,000 in the Michigan State Lottery. Finally, from the scrapbook files, 15 years ago today in wrestling, on March 20th, 1978, direct from Madison Square Garden, an announced crowd of 25,092, which included 3,000 people watching by closed circuit in the Feld Forum, saw Tatsumi Fujinami successfully defend his World Wrestling Federation junior heavyweight title against Gypsy Rodriguez. And in six-man tag action, the trio of Dusty Rhodes, Mil Mascaras, and Andre the Giant defeated Mr. Fuji, Professor Tanaka, and Ken Patera. For Pro Wrestling This Week, I'm Don Libel reporting. Capsule time, 10:08.
I would like to know where Donnie got that information that the Sheik's wife, Joyce, won $5,000 in the lottery in Michigan.
That was a very specific personal note. I know that some states require lottery winners to be printed. Like Arizona, I live, you can't anonymously accept a certain amount. Like obviously if you win like 10 or $20, no one records it. But if it's enough, you have to go down there and fill out a form, which is typically 10 grand. You have to.
Yeah. But based on the amount that you win, I think. I know some of the Powerball winners want to be anonymous, but in some states you have to announce who they are.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder if it was just something that simple, just Michigan you had to announce, and it came across because it was like, oh, did you hear about this? Or if you just found out in one of the locker rooms or something somewhere, knowing Donnie.
I took that out of that news capsule as kind of this tidbit, and I was like, I should have asked him, how the hell did you get that info? The kid.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't even surprise me if he were to say something like, "Oh, John Studd told me."
You're right.
I mean? Like just the way he was.
Yeah.
I was noticing, just as a side note, the Nasty Boys were last minute added to a program, and it got me thinking for a second because they were just announced recently as the soon-to-be recipient of the Tag Team Award for Cauliflower Alley Club. Did you ever have much interactions with the Nasty Boys?
No.
Yeah.
No. I just never had interest.
You already had the Power Twins. It was enough to handle.
Right. That shied me away from like big, rough, and sarcastic tag teams. I didn't need more misery in my life from the tag team.
Only bumped into them once. Only one of them. I was at a signing for Shawn Michaels, and Skaggs came in, and they just stopped the signing so they could just BS for a while because he was so excited to see his old buddy. And I guess they used to be roommates. So
yeah, wow.
It was kind of fun to watch, but
I do have them coming on, I think in 94.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they will come on. I think I'm cordial to them.
Yeah. But I was excited about hearing them just because they're getting that award for them.
Yeah, that's coming up at the end of August. August the 28th is the big weekend, and it should be another fabulous event out there in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do everything I can to make it back out.
Mm-hmm.
After the capsule ended, because the only reason I didn't ask you another question about this, because you dig in, the Warrior lawsuit got dropped seemingly abruptly.
Yeah. It was like an hour before, like he was gonna. It was supposed to be like the WWF was putting out a statement to address his situation, and all of a sudden he drops the lawsuit. So there could have been some really interesting stuff there that he didn't want to come out. That's the way I took it back then. That's the way I take it right now.
You don't recall hearing anything that was a little bit more in depth than that?
No.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it, because you guys start
chatting a little bit.
You chat about it for a second.
Would say, chat me up on that.
Yeah, chat me up. And the second part is an interesting bit that you guys get into as well about Vince McMahon that we'll talk about on the other side as well.
Okay.
The other thing is, I want to just touch upon the Ultimate Warrior situation. As you were privy to some of the information that was, going to be brought out in this lawsuit, and got a lot of people, their blood pressure rising. A lot of things that they thought would be coming out of this might be revealed. Although the case has been dropped, and there was some talk of the Warrior and his law firm not seeing eye to eye. On the flip side of the case, now, from what we understand, and I know you have heard this as well, about 2 hours before Titan Sports was supposed to be releasing a statement answering to many of the charges and the allegations made against them in this lawsuit to be, that's when the Ultimate Warrior mysteriously dropped this lawsuit.
Yeah, definitely more to this whole situation than meets the eye right now. I think with the Warrior dropping the suit 2 hours before, Titan was scheduled to release a statement answering some of the charges. And I think this also is going to affect the ABC Primetime Live piece that they were doing on Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, and the WWF, and everything that's been going on. So I think it's been a successful attempt by the WWF to stop some further negative publicity.
And, this time and time again, when people come out with allegations against them, I'll tell you, they know how to handle the media and everybody else, and they seem, what's amazing about this is the Warrior it didn't come out to where they were saying he would get X amount of dollars in a settlement or this or that. It's just
it was dropped. Yeah, it was not a settlement at all. And I spoke to Hellwig earlier this week on Tuesday, and that's when he told me he had problems with the attorneys regarding the suit. But then I heard some other things after I spoke to him, leading me to believe, like I said, two sides to every story. Now, incidentally, Don, and in another WWF-related story, this past Monday night at the Marriott Marquis, as you had mentioned on the capsule last week, Mr. Vince McMahon was receiving an award from the Michael Landon Foundation, and he did receive that award. It was presented to him by Randy Savage. Incidentally, Ted Turner was not there in attendance. Hank Aaron accepted the award for Mr. Turner. But Vince was up there, and Hulk introduced him. And he said about a year ago, this is like a quote from Hogan, a year ago I considered this man a friend of mine. Now, a year later, I consider him my personal hero. So there's a lot of PR maneuvering going on right now. Of course, the WWF, as far as publicly, now the wrestlers have always done a great deal of charity work. They've always been involved with Starlight Foundations and Make-A-Wish, and Hulk Hogan and many of the WWF superstars have always done a lot of charity work. But now, it is more than ever before being brought out to the public eye due to the fact that all the negative publicity that surrounded them and the ongoing U.S. Justice Department investigation. I think they're trying to really publicize every little charity thing that they do.
And especially two things come to mind with that. One, as I said to you earlier, last night I was at a WWF card in Utica, and they had people from the Red Cross there to accept donations, cash donations for the relief of starving children in Somalia. And two, I was knocked out of my chair last Monday night watching on the Raw show the video of the charitable donations and appearances and whatnot of the WWF people. I mean, that was a corporate PSA that was second to none in a long, long time. And
I know it.
I enjoyed seeing Freddie Blassie in there,
yeah, me too.
Especially the way it had ended and all.
It reminded me of when Bill Clinton was running for president, and he had that film made.
Right, a very good analogy.
A place called Hope. A place called Hope. And I guess the WWF is hoping right now that all this positive PR that they're giving to the public will have some effect. And only time will tell. Only time will tell.
Yeah, there was certainly a big PR push back then with all the negative publicity. They were doing as much as they can to publicize their good deeds.
Now, I am not I don't know any of this stuff, right? I'm not an insider, but I'm a big benefit of the doubt kind of a person. I do know that there's a lot of reasons corporations would give and donate. They get all those tax breaks and all that. And obviously this is a nice PR thing, him getting that award. But I also believe this is the award that Bruce mentioned, and, for whatever that's worth, a lot of people call him a liar as well, that this was an award that Vince didn't want and didn't want to be a part of, and that they told Vince that it was going to his father and asked him to show up to accept the award on his father's behalf. And that's why he agreed to go there, was he thought it was that. And then they switched it up and was like, no, it's you. So I don't know if I don't know at all. But I wonder, was this an intentional thing or an unintentional thing, or were people working behind Vince's back to try to help the PR thing? I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, that's a good question. And the other thing I noticed is, I mentioned Hogan, but I also mentioned Savage, that Savage gave him the award. But
yeah,
and then I mentioned Hogan, so maybe I just had a misinformation, or I obviously Savage and Hogan. I don't know if both of them were there.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I don't know if. I don't know why they both couldn't be, but I don't think Hogan, or not Hogan, but I don't think Savage and Vince were on good terms at that point, right?
No, I don't. That's true. And Hogan was almost on his way out after not too much longer. But
yeah.
Anyway, interesting tidbit from Mr. Libel on the capsule.
Yeah, and like you said, a really peculiar Warrior 2 hours before just drops the whole thing. So yeah. I'm assuming they showed him, hey, we're going to release this, and then he goes, well, what if we don't? Yeah. It's weird. It was a lot going on. And the WWE to this day does a ton of charity work.
Oh, they do. And they do it well.
And John Cena, #1 Make-A-Wish by a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, let's see. We get into some ads here. I didn't pull them because they were kind of a lot of longer ad breaks. This one, you were kind of waiting to get people on the line. The second show is all waiting, and we'll get to that. But you kind of have this kind of punchy attitude. You're kind of goofing off.
I noticed that for this show, and it continues on to the evening, and it continues even in the following week. I don't know what was going on with me, but I was just kind of this cavalier, sarcastic. I was in kind of a prankster mood, and it was almost like I just didn't give a flying F-U-C-K about anything during this show, and even the evening show. So yeah, I wonder what was going on in my personal life to cause that.
I wonder almost because it wasn't like a complacent thing, like you didn't want to be there. It was almost like you were in your stride kind of thing, like you were just super comfortable there. So it was like, check out how good I am. Like, I wonder if it was just a confidence thing.
Maybe, and it was also probably around the time where good things were really starting to happen. The IWAS tour Southeast Asia, even though I hadn't announced anything about that. That was certainly making progress with the entertainment agent I was dealing with. It was also around the time probably that I was meeting with Mike Appel, who was Bruce Springsteen's manager. And Mike, I got introduced to by the agent in New Jersey about helping, and then unceremoniously that didn't last long because he kind of wanted to run the show, and I told him no, and also AAA. We're really making strides on that AAA stuff. So yeah, there was a lot going on that was like, boy, this is going to be a good year.
Yeah. You think you're really getting a little cocky?
I might have been. Yeah.
I mean, you were young. Why wouldn't you be? You're young and things are going.
I was still in my freaking 30s, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's peak cockiness.
I was 36.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's what
I wish. Today I'm like, that's 30 years later, so 66 is a little bit more difficult than 36. I'm not cocky anymore about anything.
No. And I wonder about that too, because of the stories you told me about some people being not particularly nice to you. I'm like, because you don't come off as all that brash, but I also go, well, maybe a younger John was a little cocky. Maybe he was the kind of dude someone would want to like poke a little bit.
All I know is you get kinder as you get older.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really true.
Yeah,
it really is. And I've noticed that even about myself and my time in the music business. I mean, I was always nice to people. I always open doors and try to help people. But, and I used to have more, as my nephew would call them, explosions. Let's say if I was in a store and I didn't get the best of service, and I would fly off the handles sometimes.
Wow. So you had a bit of
which I never ever do anymore.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You did put over a lot on this.
I have to tell you one thing though. I mean, this is a little funny story.
Yeah.
Because I exploded once at a Chinese drive-through dry cleaner. And because my shirts were, back then, I mean, it was like 3X, 4X back then, And I go through this to put my shirts in, and then I noticed the price was a lot higher than I normally would pay, and this woman, it was run by Chinese or Korean. And this is not racist by any stretch of the imagination, but when I questioned her why my dry cleaning bill was too high, she was like, "Your shirt too big. We charge you extra." And I exploded on her. I do remember. I think I reported her to the owners and got her fired, actually.
Jeez.
But yeah, your shirt too big. We charge you extra.
You're like, great. I'm getting it from you now too.
Yeah.
Just had Sid harass me about this, and now you too.
Yeah. But anyway,
You did put over a lot on this one, the Telethon for Life that was coming up, and you did definitely mention that Paul Heyman was coming out, that he was going to be coming in from Scarsdale, all that stuff.
It was a big deal for Mickey B. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had Mickey come on and put it over for a minute or two. I didn't clip it because it is really specific to the telethon, and you guys aren't really bantering. You're just talking about what channel, what time.
Yeah. We were promoting it.
How to give. Yeah.
I was doing that a lot over those that time period, and but it was a worthy cause, and Mickey was always so gracious with me, and I just love the guy.
Yeah. Absolutely. You did cancel bowling that week because you said it had a lot of independent shows going on.
I think Bruce and I were afraid to bowl those kids.
You didn't sweep them like you thought you would. You're like, these couple kids are real tough.
I also probably didn't have patience.
Yeah. Well, you were getting you were getting too big. You were talking about that, right? You were getting all cocky. Let's take a call randomly in this one, because this is one where you guys are waiting on DDP and you're waiting on another guest, and so you're kind of just like, you even asked Bruce, what do you mean to do? Like, should I take a call or something? Like, and then you kind of wait for him, and then he says, do an ad read and then do a call. And okay, well, but so this is Jason from Northport, and I wanted to play this because it leads into the next clip, actually.
Okay.
Jason in where? Northport. Okay, here we go. Jason, how you doing?
Good. John, what happened to Jim Ross Monday night?
Oh, yeah, let's discuss that situation. Okay? Jim Ross, he was supposed to be on our show this past Saturday night on Pro Wrestling Spotlight on WEVD.
Right.
He canceled out of that. However, he did Mike Tenay's radio show Saturday night. I called him on this on Sunday, and he had said he had not signed his WCW release, which he really has not. That's why he wasn't at Raw. But he has a deal with the WWF. He's going to the WWF, and I assume he will be calling the WrestleMania card.
Okay, and what's going on with the tag belt in the WWF? You have Beefcake and Hogan and Steiners.
Well, I tell you what, the more I see it now, the more people I talk to, maybe there'll be a situation where Hogan and Beefcake do win this title at WrestleMania.
Then what do you see happening to the Steiners?
Well, I see the Steiners winning the title. What a possible scenario could be: Hogan and Beefcake winning the title and then automatically giving it up, or them losing afterwards, a month or so afterwards, with Beefcake getting hurt. As you know, Hogan would never be the guy to get pinned in a situation like that. And then the Steiners maybe winning it at SummerSlam.
Okay, take care.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right.
That was it. He got the information he wanted, and that was it. It was over.
You could tell you were a little peeved about JR, and that's going to lead into the next clip because you do another ad read.
Okay.
You talk about Bruno coming out to Westchester. You were putting over that big time. Were you part of promoting that one at all?
No.
Because you mentioned it a bunch. I just know you liked Bruno so much. So
yeah.
And then after the ad read, you decide you're going to take this JR on, like, head on. So I got that right here.
Now, I wanted to address the Jim Ross situation just a little bit more here on the program, because Jim had committed to do my show and Wade Keller's show out of Minneapolis. And, of course, Wade is editor of the Pro Wrestling Torch, one of the top inside wrestling journalists in the business today. And Mike Tenay's show, Wrestling Insiders, out of Las Vegas, syndicated program. And he canceled out on us and was really, really irritating to me, because he did make the commitment to appear on the program, and a lot of people were looking forward to talking to Jim about his departure from WCW. But I found it a little bit ironic, once he has an imminent deal with the World Wrestling Federation, that he suddenly pulls out of the program. So I talked to him on Sunday, and I asked him what the deal was, and he was saying about the not getting the release from WCW, and also talking about how volatile the New York market was, and he didn't really want to dance around any questions. Well, I really didn't accept that as a proper reason for canceling out on the program. I just find it a little bit ironic that once someone is getting ready to enter the WWF, that automatically John Arezzi, and in this case even Wade Keller, are taboo. Why? Because we are covering things truthfully, because we're not soft-soaping anything. That is just a situation. I really lost. I still have a great deal of respect for Mr. Ross as a wrestling announcer, but personally, the shine has come off him a little bit for me over the events over the last week, and I kind of stated that in conversations I've had with people, and I also expressed my displeasure to Mr. Ross, and I wish him the best of luck with the WWF. They're certainly getting a quality announcer, but I just don't think it was very nice for him to cancel out of the scheduled commitment with us here at the program last Saturday night on WEVD.
Got under my skin.
Yeah. You were pretty upset about it. Was part of it because you were trying to get to JR before he was locked in with the WWF because you knew that would be it?
Yeah, and he'd been on the show previously, so it wasn't like he had never been on before. And, with him leaving WCW when he left, I thought I thought he should talk about it, because he was Watt's right-hand guy, and then he's leaving. And there was just a lot of information that I think would have been interesting radio.
Yeah.
And then for him not to come on, and I was getting a little big for my britches, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and then probably, little oil on the fire, the being on someone else's show. You promised me.
Right.
You said no.
On Tanae, yeah.
And you said Tanae was on the same time as you, right?
Yeah, on Saturday nights. Yep.
So theoretically, he agreed to do your show and then ultimately just went, fuck it, I can't do both. I'm just going to do Tanae.
Mm. Yeah, but I had 2 shows.
That's true. Yeah. You could have made it work. Yeah. I like how you even catch yourself where you're just like, I lost look, I still respect the guy.
Hey, always been a great announcer for sure. And like I said, even on the past episode, I had conversations with him after he got bounced out of the WWF about helping IWAS. So I had some in-person meetings with him about that. And I always had a cordial relationship with Jim, even the last time I saw him in Vegas at Cauliflower Alley a few years back. I still respect the guy. I really do.
Yeah.
But he should have did the show. He should have did it.
On the damn show. Yeah, I think it's cool. But it just kind of was, hearing you get all irked about it. You do some more reads. You also mentioned somewhere, and I just want to throw it out there because I'm hoping that we hear it on the next week's, that you had talked to Jim Hellwig, Warrior, and that he was going to give you more information about that charity thing that he'd said he'd set up. It sounded like that was actually moving along. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hey, we talked to him a couple weeks ago and he mentioned it. It was like, right. No, I talked to him a couple days ago and it's still happening.
Yeah, I don't remember if we ever had any more communications on that.
I mean, this week you said you did. On Tuesday you said you talked to him. So yeah. I'm hoping the next one you go, okay, now here's
right, this is the info. Yeah, for the Gunner. Yeah, we'll see, right? But
I thought it was cool. Because you and I
talked
about
it last show. You could have set a cassette in from 30 years ago into the machine, and you start listening to it for the first time, and who knows what comes out of that.
Yeah. And the beauty of the wrestling business is you hear stuff and you go, that probably never happened. And then you hear a week later and you go, oh shit, it did happen.
Yeah. I mean, when we aired the podcast a few weeks back with him on it, I mean, we got at least one comment saying I would, stake my life on whether or not a charity for the Von Erichs actually happened by Hellwig, bet his life that it didn't.
Well, sounds like it was definitely emotion.
Yeah.
You did a couple ad reads too for some upcoming shows, including Eastern Championship Wrestling, ECW, and Universal Wrestling Superstars. I thought that was an interesting.
Tommy D.
Yeah. I don't hear much about that one. Did that not last long?
What happened? Oh, yeah, because we're going to go over that in the next episode for sure, because that's when I meet Jake for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's when I have to take him to the hospital after his match with Nails, because Nails busted his chin open. And that's when he's smoking crack in the car. It's my first impression.
Yeah. Did you want a little bit? No, I'm okay. But I had to do a double take Because I thought you said UWF.
No,
you said UWS.
Universal Tommy D's Universal Wrestling Superstars, UWS.
Yeah. And then but it made me also think. I had to look it up. You weren't on the radio when UWF really folded, right? Because that was 96 when Herb died.
No, well, when Herb died in 90. No, I was not on the air.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Do you ever, as a side note, did you ever in the moment when you were no longer doing the wrestling radio show hear something in the news and felt like, man, I wish I still had the show?
Yeah.
Like something you wish you had covered?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, my timing was the worst. My timing was the worst when I had enough and I couldn't do it anymore. And, it was like, I was promoting more and I was working. When I stopped the show, I took a job with the agent that set up the IWAS stuff. And I started working in his office in New Jersey. And I was working on the Peking Circus that was doing a big show out in Reno, Nevada. So I was working that, and I was trying to sell dates on some Beatle tribute shows and LaToya Jackson. I was working in a booking agency, and he did a lot of international business. Jose Feliciano was another one of the artists there. And I was trying to book IWAS on shows, but the radio show had gone away. And then, I kept promoting until the middle to end of 96. But my timing was the shits because the wrestling business turned around.
Yeah.
The Attitude Era and I'd moved on from the business, but my timing was the shits about getting out before it kind of fucking exploded.
Yeah. There's that. Obviously the lost possible revenue, but was there ever something that like you felt like topic wise?
Yeah. It was always that. It was the screw job. It was, it was that stuff. I wish I would have had the show on for that. Yeah. There was a lot of those events, but at that point in my life, it was kind of like, I'm done with this. And once I got out and got hired by WNMJC Radio in November of 96, I turned the page and changed my name to John Alexander, and not legally, but professionally. And I just turned the page. Yeah. And then I still had this peripheral involvement with wrestling because that's when I called the WWF and asked to be, the account executive on record for the stations I worked for.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Hugo Maslick, and I was still going to all the shows and making money because they were one of my biggest clients. So, yeah.
So, there's a trade-off. You didn't have the public eye on you anymore, but you got to enjoy it all a little bit.
I was in hiding in the business.
Just hiding.
Booking wrestlers at appearances, from the WWF and showing up and seeing Cactus Jack or Sonny and like they're looking at me and I'm like, shh, don't say who I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, what a life. It's in my book, by the way, Matt Memories. You could buy it anywhere.
Absolutely. Let's see. We only got a couple more of the morning show, but you bring on a Demolition member because at this point we had the original Demolition, we got new Demolition, and you weren't sure who you were getting on the line. So let's find that out.
What we're going to do right now is we're going to go on the phones and talk to Demolition, and we are going to chat with them right now. This is Axe or Smash. Who's on the phone with us?
This is Axe, Demolition.
How you doing, Axe? This is John Arezzi.
How are you?
First time I had an opportunity to speak to you. Of course, you've been a superstar in the world of pro wrestling over the last several years, a WWF Tag Team Champion. Your career is long and illustrious, and you're in town for several events promoted by Universal Wrestling Superstars.
That's right. They're doing very good. I came in last night. We went to Bayonne, New Jersey High School, sold out capacity. And tonight we're in Canarsie, Brooklyn at the Holy Family Auditorium. And I think there's a few good tickets left, but they're going fast.
Oh, of course. And last night, I understand, a real good crowd in New Jersey. And I believe that you are up against Jake the Snake.
That's right.
Now, is this the first time you ever worked with Jake?
I had a couple matches with him in the past. I've really never run across him too much because I was busy basically in tag team action, but I've signed some singles action lately.
Yes. Now, this whole Demolition concept, of course, were you the person that developed the Demolition gimmick and the concept?
Well, I can't make any comments on that. And I'm involved in some legal action, so let's just.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. But you do have a new partner, and can you tell us a little about him?
Yeah. His name's Blast. He's about 6'8", 355, 360 pounds. Good young kid, competitive, wants to go. And as soon as I met him, I told him he needed to brush up a little rough edges a little bit. Took him to the gym, been working with him. He's got a good attitude, and we've captured the Universal Wrestling belts, and I think we're going to hold on to him for a long time. Matter of fact, we'll put a challenge out to any tag team. I don't care where they're at.
So you're into this tag team. Are you guys just appearing now in the Northeast, or where have you guys been working recently?
Well, we've been mainly in the Northeast here. We have plans on moving over to the Orient. I've got a couple of inquiries about Europe, so things are on the horizon.
Great. And also, you have been involved with other wrestling promotions recently, Global Wrestling Federation. You had a stint with them.
That's right.
Do you enjoy just working, instead of being involved with, say, a major organization like Titan Sports or WCW, do you enjoy now being able to have the freedom to book yourselves wherever and whenever you want to go and where you want to go?
I enjoy that because I've got another business. I'm basically working on the weekends now. I've got a security company, a detective agency, and it ties me up most of the time during the week. It's starting to take off. My partner and I have been able to take some weekends off now. And, I've always had my love in wrestling, and I enjoy it. And I've got an opportunity to work with a good federation here in Universal, and they're on the upcoming move. And to be honest with you, there's no crap around.
Yeah. And there's certainly a lot of situations in pro wrestling right now, which, just to ask you a question, as far as all the past couple of years, the negative publicity that's surfaced about pro wrestling, in particular with one major wrestling organization, are you kind of glad that you guys weren't in there at the time where all this was going down?
Well, there again, I can't really comment on some things. I wasn't really involved in that, but...
Yeah.
I'm not going to jeopardize my lawsuit, and
right.
But, I understand what you're trying to say, and I'd like to comment on it.
I understand totally.
Dancing around.
Yep. I wonder how it became to that lawsuit.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because I also believe in the interview that Don Liable had with him a couple weeks prior, he said flat out Demolition was his idea. That he came up with it. And then in this one, he's like, I can't talk about it.
I think he might have won it because he still uses it.
Yeah, I feel like that's true. But yeah, I thought it was kind of neat, kind of interesting. I do like, because there's something notable in there. You asked about his new tag partner, and he calls them Blast.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look up who Blast is, but you have a caller in the evening show. How far apart was your evening to your day show?
12 hours, almost 12 hours, yeah.
A fan asks you who the new Demolition is, and you say you have no idea. I just loved it because here, right there, he goes, "Oh, I'm partnering with Blast," and then a fan calls in, "Who's in Demolition?" You go, "Well, Axe is Bill Eadie." He goes, "No idea about the other guy," and then you says, "Smash is Repo Man, and Crush is Crush." So it's like good.
Yeah. I didn't mention Blast.
Yeah. Well, you finally get DDP on the line.
Yeah. 30 years ago.
30 years ago, not 30 years later.
No.
To give an update on his injury. He had a shoulder issue. And I put this in two different parts because I thought there was some neat stuff on either side of it.
Okay.
So this is going to be the first part.
We might be joined by another special guest in just a couple of minutes here on this program. We had spoke to a guy that's been injured and has not participated in any wrestling matches in the last month or so. He's recuperating from a major injury, but he is expected to get back, and we want to find out what his future plans are. Is he going to be on the phone with us? Let's bring him on right now. We're going to talk to one of the most flamboyant personalities in the wrestling business. Somebody who's recuperating from injury right now, but fans certainly miss him. We're talking to direct from down south, Diamond Dallas Page.
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, what's up?
Brother, I never had a bad day in my life. Well, actually, I did have one. Got caught with an elbow in the shoulder region and tore my rotator cuff. But since December, I've been rehabbing that sucker and coming back real strong, real strong.
Yeah, you had injured that. Can you tell us the specifics as who you were up against in the ring?
I was me and Vinny Vegas against Tex and Shanghai, and I threw Shanghai into the ropes to give him an elbow, and I think it was a little bit my fault. I came off real strong at him, and he twisted his shoulder into mine, into the back of my shoulder, and when I whacked him, man, it was like whiplash.
Wow.
It was, bad placement by me, and I just should have tried to take his head off instead of hit him right under the chin there. And when I hit him, man, I felt like someone took a knife and cut my muscle. And I don't know if you've ever had a torn muscle before, but when I was in the back locker room, Cactus Jack looked at me and he said, "Is it the worst pain you've ever had?" And I said, "Brother, I can't even move my arm." He said, "You tore your muscle." And Jack has torn a few muscles in his time.
Oh, yes, indeed. He's been on this program a lot of times. He calls up usually the day after pay-per-views or the night after pay-per-views, and he's always in pain. But that rotator cuff, as far as if you were a baseball player, that's career threatening. Now, you've been in rehabilitation and trying to get it all back together. Do you have a targeted date as far as when you think you'll be going back into the ring?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And at this point right now, I'm looking at probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be back strong. For the last month, I've been down in the ring, and I've been working out daily. Matter of fact, I've been snaking around with Jake the Snake, and he is taking me under his wing, seeing monstrous potential in Diamond Dallas Page here. And I've really, even though I've not been going full speed in the ring at this point, I've come light years. In just a year, what happened at WCW, year and a half, I should have been the Rookie of the Year, according to PWI, but the underhanding mind of Bill Watts slipping Daddy's Boy in there to steal my coveted Rookie of the Year plaque from PWI, Diamond Dallas Page doesn't care that much about trophies, but the bottom line is it should have been in my hands.
He was a little disgruntled, wasn't he?
Yeah. Do you think Bill Watts got the PWI to push the name around?
Hey, listen, anything could happen. But I don't know. I mean, they were pretty legit.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Stuff. They were really, there's always politics involved when it comes to things like this, any type of award. But I don't know.
Yeah. I like his Cactus Jack injury update.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong about it until he told Cactus Jack. It's fine.
DDP. I mean, listen, what an amazing career the guy had, especially after getting his break and really starting to gain popularity in his mid-30s, close to being 40.
Yeah.
I mean, what a story. And to this day with DDP Yoga and the people that he helps, and even him kind of saving Jake's life.
Yeah.
I think more than once. He's done good things for people.
Yeah, I agree.
Just not this poor guy in Nashville.
He's not doing shit for you, man. Well, let's see. There's one more clip from DDP's interview here that I wanted to play and then talk about real quick.
And right now, I'm targeting for, like I said, the middle of April. Back in December, even before the injury, I wasn't really taken with the way WCW, under the tutelage of Bill Watts, was handling my career. They were holding me down, and by stealing my Rookie of the Year award, it was obvious to me what was happening here. So I started inquiring in 2 other places: Smoky Mountain, the new Continental, which opened up under Barb Armstrong, who's the president down there, Puerto Rico, Mexico. I put the word out, and there's been quite a response coming back to get Diamond Dallas Page out there. Now, since then, WCW has approached me to come back. WWF, right now, I'm sort of weighing my options, and I'm going to go where the most money is, and who's ever going to give me the best chance to really show what Diamond Dallas Page can do.
Well, you answered my next question as far as where you'd be working next, what federation you'd be working for, and at this point, it looks like the options are in your favor. And with the way the wrestling business is, with little promotions starting to spring up here and there, that's a good sign for pro wrestling and the pro wrestling business, because there's more places to go to make a little cash.
Oh, without a doubt. It's great for the boys all the way around, because then these promoters as a whole don't think they've got you under your thumb and they can do whatever you want, because you got to feed your family or feed yourself.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes down to my career, I'm going to do the best thing for Diamond Dallas Page. I didn't work my butt off to get where I am in a short period of time to turn around and have them tell me, you know, how far I can go. You know, I know I got the best look, the best mouth, and from what I've come in the last month and a half just down in the school, you know, working on my techniques and stuff and how I approach a match and the psychology of the match, it's come light years once again. And over this next year, my next spot will be to be the most improved wrestler of 1993.
Well, not only have you been the most improved wrestler, and of course in the short time you've been in the ring, you've been making a lot of strides, but even before, you were an active wrestler as a manager, and of course you had the best-looking valets in all of pro wrestling accompany to the ring.
Well, you know, that's just a fine art of DDP. Happen to be able to get the finest women on the planet to get in the stable of the Diamond Dolls. They all just want to be around the flam, the flair, you know, the walking, the talking, the TV, the limousines, the whole deal. And it's not too tough when you got the golden tongue to get them into that stable.
That's exactly right.
And, you know, I always like to turn on to some of the boys out there in the stands there just to see, now, who's he going to be bringing out next? That was another thing. WCW tried to keep me down with that. I wanted to bring out the ladies and stuff, and they were like, you know, we don't have time for that, Dallas. We don't have time for this. We don't have time for that. When I start to bring those ladies out again, they will be BADD, badder than ever.
Well, I tell you what, if you come up to the Northeast or some other areas, especially up here in the Northeast, New York fans, don't forget to bring them girls with you.
If not, I'll grab some on the way to the ring.
There you go. But listen, I know you're in the gym working out, and we got a few minutes left here on the program. I just want to thank you for coming on and giving us a little progress report about your injury and your status in the wrestling business. And I know we'll be seeing you in the ring real soon.
All right, Johnny. It's been your pleasure, of course.
Of course it has.
Drop me a line later.
All right, take care now.
See ya.
Okay. See ya. That's one of his staples. But I tell you, this guy has had tremendous amount of great-looking women with him at all times. So we're trying to get in on the good side of the Diamond Dallas Page, and maybe Bruce, he might possibly share the wealth with a couple of guys like us who are out there scrounging around for dates. 661-1440 is the number to call. We'll take a...
Yep. Yeah, he was always... he did have the Diamond Dolls, and he, of course, was pretty plugged into some of the bigger strip clubs in Minneapolis and elsewhere, Florida, and but yeah, he always had a bevy of beauties.
I was kind of impressed with, just through this interview, his talking ability. This is his first radio interview. He'd only really been wrestling, a year?
He'd been in the business for a bit, and he was always a good talker. He just had that natural ability to talk, cut promos. He was very natural at it.
Yeah.
And he was very confident.
Yeah, he didn't mess up words or stutter on anything or try to figure out where he was going. He just rolled with it. Whatever came out, that's what was supposed to come out, you know? Like, it was really cool.
He was a natural.
Yeah. But I also thought you gave him all this time because he was also kind of petitioning the companies. Look, I'm not locked into anybody. Who's going to pay me the most? Like, he's trying to
He's trying to make his way.
Yeah.
And I think the visibility he got that year, especially even with the AAA. I mean, he did get some really good visibility. I mean, and he was a go-getter. I mean, he was very aggressive. He knew he had the ability. He knew that even though he was older, he still could go. you know, and he was a great worker, and he had great charisma, and the people loved him.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well. Let's see. We do have, you wrap it up with a few callers. You don't get very many, and it's really to the point, just like yes, no questions. Although Adam from Levittown did ask how the Power Twins tryout did, because you had mentioned they were doing a tryout at WWF.
Yeah, that didn't go well for them.
All you said was that you heard that they haven't heard anything at all. Did they ever get any word? Or was it just showed up and just that was it?
No. They were actually, once the WWF found out that Dr. D. David Schultz trained them,
yeah,
they had no future there.
Wow.
And they might have not known that Dr. D. David Schultz had trained them until the guy showed up there.
Yeah, that's true, because they might have asked him once they got there.
Right.
Where'd you guys learn?
Yeah, as soon as they heard that, you know, that name, that was the end of that. And they, from what the Twins say today, is that they were kind of blacklisted because of that with the WWF.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, well.
And they would have had a great gimmick. I mean, that was a great gimmick.
Yeah.
They were big.
And they were great talkers.
Big boys. They're great talkers.
They got their points across.
Yeah, wait till you meet them on an upcoming episode when we do the reunion show.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll learn pretty damn quick what the Power Twins are all about.
Yeah, I'll be off camera.
They've never taken a photo without sticking their middle finger up.
Yeah. Well,
they're very
mature
individuals.
Hey, there's one thing I've learned from AEW. It's that wrestlers love the middle finger.
Yeah. Yeah, what's going on over there? I mean, you know, not to digress, but, you know, the day we're taping this, I heard all kinds of crap about what was being said on camera last night from promos. I haven't seen the show, but I heard
I just finished watching it, and
it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, there was a lot. They definitely are pushing the envelope as much as they can, for better or for worse. We'll see, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of makes me laugh because because people show up in AEW and then they're like, oh, I can do the middle finger. And they do it a lot. Like, okay. But Power Twins never stopped.
No, they did not.
Let's see. And then most of the calls you had were things that you'd already covered. What's going on with Nails? You already covered it, so you just give him a real quick one. What's going on with Razor's knee? He's already back. What happened with Dino Bravo? That was all of last week. Someone asked if JR was going to continue doing his talk show, and you just said you can't imagine that he would be. But that does bring us to the evening show, Pro Wrestling Spotlight. The meat of this show, though, was their morning show because you had the guests to cover and all of that. So we have a show here where you have all callers because you're waiting for Jake the Snake to call in. And that I didn't do it, but I considered it. Anyone on Patreon is going to hear it. The amount of times you go, just waiting on Jake, gonna do more calls or Jake. Like, you could almost do a compilation of you waiting on Jake. But what we got here is the opening of the show, because you allude to something that I gotta know if you remember.
And now, Eastside Wrestling presents John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Brought to you by Holbro Paint Industries. 1851 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. Your one-stop center for all your home and commercial painting needs. Here's your host, John Arezzi.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Pro Wrestling Spotlight right here on New York's Greater 1050 WEVD. It's great to be back live in the studio. Last week, as everybody knows, the blizzard of 93 kind of trapped us out on Long Island, so we did the program from the humble abode in the kitchen. I was able to smoke a cigarette in my own kitchen, but I can't do that in the studio. But it was a lot of fun nonetheless, and it worked out fine, and we had a great time. We're here to talk pro wrestling as we do each and every week. Another exciting show lined up for you. I just returned from Canarsie. We were over at Holy Family Auditorium, myself and my producer Bruce Jacobs, checking out the action by Universal Wrestling Superstars. I ran into a lot of the listeners over there, one in particular that I couldn't get away from, but we won't mention that on the air.
Yeah, who I couldn't get away from. It could have been several people.
There's a lot of fans you didn't
No,
like.
there's Ski from Hicksville. I mean, who was always like, he was like the sidler. He'd like just stand next to you and wouldn't depart. But it was beloved. But there was others. There was like, you'd have hardcore fans that, you know, you're nice to everybody and you try to be nice to everyone. But then some people are just, you know, they get a little too close for comfort sometimes. So not like a stalker situation, I would say, but certainly, and you appreciate people, but sometimes it was just a little too much.
A little much. So you'd be like, all right, well, I got to go over here. And goes, yeah, I can come along. You're going, all right, well.
Yeah. Or you turn around and be the same person, like standing right next to you, just looking at you.
All right. I thought it was funny because you even like, we're not going to get into that right now. And I'm like, likely the person you're talking about is listening.
Absolutely.
Let's see. You do an ad read where you tell everyone if you see the guys at the paint store to give them drop kicks, eye gouges.
Yeah.
You read a couple more ads and you finish your timing of it right before the music stops. And you do another one of those. How do you like that?
Oh, yeah, it was tight. It was a tight read.
Yeah,
and I was probably beginning to freak out a little bit too, because each week they'd ask me to say this, and they would get an item at the store, a giveaway, mention John Arezzi, mention this, mention that. That's an advertiser being very concerned about the response for the advertising dollars they're spending.
Yes,
which means there's not getting the ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
So that was starting to freak me out a little bit too.
Yeah, because this is the first time I think you mentioned getting a free paint
a roller. Pan. Yeah, first it was like the Weekend of Champion posters signed by 10 wrestlers. I mean, that was kind of the thing. Then there were cap giveaways, and now the roller. They're wanting to gauge who's listening to the show.
Yeah.
And the one thing about advertising for most people is that you're not going to go into a business and say, I just heard you on the radio. I'm mentioning, it's like it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah. And if someone's already got a paint pan, they're not going to say, well, I better get my free paint pan.
I mean, this is just kind of like what an advertiser will do. I mean, there was like that famous story about the Pines Motor Lodge in West Babylon with WNYG with the free bottle of champagne. And, and then I just kind of was like, well, I bought this. I have a case of champagne and I haven't given out one. And then I was a wise ass and said, well, let's have a party.
Yeah.
And that didn't endear me to him. So anyway, it was always, but it was, for a show like Pro Wrestling Spotlight, I mean, the LNS Comics of the world got the responses, or the sports bars, and to a lesser extent, the bowling folks. I mean, we did promotions and brought performers there, and but these other types of mainstream businesses didn't get the big response that you would hope for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of it also is just they don't consider it a win, but it is to you if one of your listeners just walks into the store and looks around. And if they don't find something they want and they leave, that's still a win to you because you got them in the building, right? Where for them, it's no, not unless they're getting the 4 gallons.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you always try to over deliver on the spots. And that's what I always tried to do. But if people aren't walking in, then eventually the advertiser goes away.
Yeah, for sure. It was also funny that you'd finished so proudly with that timing, because later on the music stops before you finish and you can hear it in your voice. And you're like,
I'm so upset.
But you get your first caller here because you're waiting for Jake to call in.
Yeah.
He's got to be calling in any minute. So you guess you'll get a few calls off the line. And we got Frank from Bensonhurst.
Okay.
We're going to go to the phones right now. Open up these phone lines and wait for Jake. hopefully he's in a good mood. Everything worked out, and he'll be joining us tonight. We'll go to Frank from Bensonhurst, our first caller tonight. Frank, are you there?
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm doing very good.
Okay, I got 3 questions for you. Is it true that Paulie Dangerously will be coming to the WWF managing the new Demolition?
No.
Okay. Number 2, don't you think it would have been smarter for the WWF to bring in Medusa instead of Luna Vachon to go against Sherry?
Yeah, I spoke to Medusa a couple of days ago, and she is really happy right now, just picking her own dates, not having to work a full-time grind. She's very happy with the national exposure here in the States that WCW gave her, but she's going over to do some dates overseas. She's selecting various things. She's also involved in a couple of projects, a couple of video projects, the Best of Medusa, and also a couple of workout tapes. She'll be joining us on this program within the next few weeks to talk about all of that, and we're going to do an in-store personal appearance with her at one of our new sponsors.
All right, my 3rd question. Any celebrities going to be at WrestleMania?
The only one that I've heard bantered around is Rush Limbaugh.
What about Howard Stern?
Boy, they would be smart to try to tie Howard in. They really would. But and what I've heard is Rush Limbaugh, and he had mentioned on his radio show that he is considering doing the event.
And maybe I'll have Shawn Michaels sing the national anthem then.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
All right, thanks a lot, John.
Thanks for your call.
Bye-bye.
And Rush Limbaugh, of course, is a big Steiner Brothers fan.
What does that mean?
He was a fan of the Steiner brothers.
It felt like a gag the way you said it. Like, of course he's a Steiner Brothers fan. I'm like, what is that? Is that a joke that I missed?
I don't know. I mean, back then, before, well, he's not no longer with us as well. Rush has passed away, but years and years ago, I had listened to him.
Yeah.
Before the country became polarized, and
yeah.
So,
yeah. I thought it was kind of cool. You can hear the friendship blooming there with you and Medusa. You clearly knew a lot about what was going on. You had a good conversation. Which, talking to Medusa, she gets a lot in. She will.
Yeah, she does, and she had other projects there: video, workout, the Best of Medusa. She was always, and still is to this day. She just moves. She goes. She puts her foot on the gas, and she's off.
Yep.
And the
absolutely
storied career that she's had, and the entrepreneurial spirit that she shows to this day, was evident 30 years ago. And I believe I was reaching out to her with the initial conversations about having her come on the IWAS tour with me. Because it was, I wanted to bring not just women wrestling there, but I wanted to bring somebody that really knew how to go.
Yeah.
And she was tough to this day. So, that's why I selected her and Wendy Richter to go on that tour.
Huh.
And they did a fabulous job.
Yeah. Did they get along back then?
They did.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any heat now or anything, but I
don't know if there was never any heat back then. They were professional, and the matches that we put them through, not just against each other, but mixed tags.
Yeah.
There was even I believe it was a mixed match. And then we had that incredible 8-person mixed tag team.
Yeah.
Where it was Medusa and one of the Mexican minis and one of the twins, and a male wrestler against the other twin, the other Mexican mini, the other woman, and the guy. It was probably the most unique 8-person tag in the history of the business.
That's awesome. Yeah, that'll be exciting to hear you break that down as we get to it.
Yeah.
James from Queens calls in and says, "Is Repo Man smash?" You say, "Yep," and move on. There was a caller who was going on and on about Von Erich and Kerry, and said that, because I don't remember seeing this, but maybe you remember hearing it. It was that, and I didn't want to play the whole thing because it's kind of sad. But he talks about how he was seeing a psychologist, and for over an hour was talking about how he was going to kill himself, and then went on and did that shortly after, like a day before is when this was. And he was saying, the Von Erichs have a lawsuit on their hands and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
did that come out?
Kerry was not. Maybe he was crying for help.
Yeah,
but he was telling people that he had really had enough.
Yeah,
which is so sad because, an intervention or whatever. But if someone is going to be hell bent on doing that to themselves, there's nobody that's going to be able to stop them.
No,
if that's in your head and that's what you're planning on doing, and even if you're sending signals out to people, if that's what you really are going to do, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's very sad.
It is. Nelson from Manhattan, is Sid Justice and Sherry going to be at WrestleMania? You said Sid no, Sherry yes with the Tonka. That brings us to Felipe from Brooklyn.
And we'll go back to the phones now. We'll go to Philippe from Brooklyn. Hello?
Hello, John?
Yes.
This is Felipe.
Felipe, how are you?
Long time no hear, John.
How are you? How's everything?
I'm glad to hear you back on the radio.
Thank you.
First thing I want to say is, it's like I say, I think you're a A-OK guy. You know, it's strange because I've always been to your station, but I never actually called up before.
I know, it's the first.
Question. Maybe some of wrestling fans want to talk about this, too. WrestleMania, does it seem to be one of the worst cards ever so far announced, or is it just me?
I don't know if you can call it the worst card ever. It's not as strong. It's not as strong as it used to be. There's really not that hype and excitement about the big WrestleMania event that there used to be in years past. It just doesn't have the glamour that it used to have, in my opinion. Not all the celebrity tie-ins and all the build-ups for the main events. Of course, you have Hulk Hogan coming back, and you got a couple of exciting matches there. But I would agree with you somewhat with that.
All right, just say stick with it, John, and to the wrestling fans out there, keep supporting John Arezzi. He's your ticket to, I guess, wrestling education, if you want to say it that way, John.
Listen and learn, as our friend James from Seaford came up with that term. Listen and learn, and that's what's going to be on our new
John,
T-shirt.
I'll give you a call later during the week, okay?
That sounds great, Felipe.
Bye-bye.
Take care now.
Listen and learn.
Yeah. Listen and learn.
It's almost like I was the professor.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling. Yeah. The professor. You know, people here in Nashville, and because back in college, I had, when I went to Emerson College, I was toying around with a gimmick about, almost like what the Genius used to do, about throwing diplomas to fans on the way to the ring, you know, if I was ever going to pursue a wrestling career. And the people here in Nashville, the people that I did let very few people know that I used to be in the wrestling business. And when I talked to one person in particular, two actually, about this professor gimmick idea that I had, to this day, they never call me by my name. They just call me the professor.
That's so good.
But I enjoyed that call from Felipe. You know, it's like he was down to the station, but he's never called in. I don't recall him ever being at the station, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you remembered this guy coming around from time to time.
Anyone who wanted to visit would always be welcomed. I never turned anybody down.
Did you just have fans that sit in while you were doing the show?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to, one guy, who lives in North Carolina now, is a really great guy. His name is Louis Fabricini, and he was associated with Alba Bakery in Brooklyn, the best Italian pastries. And he'd come down to the station at WGBB, and he'd bring cakes and pastries, and brought a birthday cake there once for Paulie. And to this day, he communicates with me all the time. And Luigi, what a dear friend he was back then. But yeah, there were always people wanting to come in. James and Jim from Seaford, and Andrew Goldberger, and it was just like, hey, John, can I hang out? Yeah, come on over. You know.
Wow. Would you guys like hang out after the show? Let's go grab a bite or something.
Sometimes. I know with Andrew, I think Cactus and I took him to the Ground Round for lunch once, and so I never kind of shy away from that stuff.
That's really neat. That's really cool. Because he came across like, it's me.
You're right.
You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, what's up? And I thought that was interesting too. I've been in the studio a bunch and never called, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, listen and learn. Any of those T-shirts up on your eBay? Listen and learn shirts?
I don't think so. No.
All right.
That was actually a phrase that James from Seaford had designed, that listen and learn with the spotlight. And he was like, I think this would be a good logo for you. It was like, and that stuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's the basis of what we have here. It's just a cleaned up version of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Not that his was a mess or anything. We just wanted to give it a little tune up.
Give it a little punch.
Yeah. A little punch. Let's see. Mike from West Babylon. We only got one more clip, but you had a ton more callers. And I wanted to talk about a couple of them. Let's see.
Mike from West Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a guy that actually, Mike Pires, maybe his name. He may be even listening to this show, because I ran into him at my hometown diner a couple years ago when I was visiting home, and he recognized me. And he said he was a long-time listener, so that might be the same dude.
Wow. Yeah, he called, asked if the Rock and Roll Express and Heavenly Bodies were going to be, we're going to go to WCW, and you said no, but that you had a feeling to keep an eye on them. You said Rock and Roll Express have at least a couple more years left in them, which turns out to be true.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah. But I think you had mentioned Smoky Mountain for them.
Yeah.
Tony from Queens was asking about the Japan Super Show and asked what happened to the Steiners, because they had filmed a match for the show, but it didn't air. And you had mentioned that they did it under the WCW name, but because of the date that it was filmed, WWF said they had rights to the Steiners at that time, that there was an overlay, and so they just pulled it. Which I thought was fascinating that you knew that. Also, that Hawk is cashing in his Lloyd's of London insurance, and then he goes, "Who the hell is Doink the Clown?" And he said Matt Bourne. Michael from Jersey asked about the members of Demolition, which we talked about. You had no idea the new one, even though you just were told. Brian from New Milford. Will the Horsemen get back together? You think it looks like it. You think they're probably going to get Wyndham. And then you say you'd like to see Cactus Jack be an enforcer for them, like a bouncer. And the guy says, no, they were all about wrestling. And he's like a brawler. And you're like, yeah, he just could be this mean person that is fighting for them, right? This also, I noticed there was like 3 different callers that referred to other callers as their family. My cousin, my brother, was this guy who called earlier. Oh, this guy called in earlier. And you're like, okay. I just thought that was neat, because I didn't hear that much in previous ones, and I heard it a lot in this one. Telethon for Life you put over. Lou from Brooklyn asks if Lex Luger's unhappy with the WWF, and all you knew was he was mad about being called the narcissist. And I liked that he asked, will Sting jump ship? And you're like, no way. He's the highest paid wrestler in the world right now. Why would he move? And he never did. Carlos from Queens was asking why they stopped airing the Madison Square Garden shows on the MSG network. And you said because attendance was down. They're trying to drive people to go there, not just watch it on TV.
Yeah, that I would have to change my answer to now, probably. And that would be because there was probably a rights fee that they couldn't continue with the WWF. Because Vince wants to control everything.
Still.
Yeah. Well, back then, that could have been the reason why. Now that I think about it, 30 years older and wiser.
Yeah. Huh. That's cool. He asked about Mil Mascaras, and you talked about how he's with CMML, but you also mentioned, as just a fun kind of fact, that he was the very first masked wrestler allowed to wrestle in New York.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
Ooh.
That took place in 1972.
Why would they not allow masked wrestlers before that?
There was a law in the books in New York at the State Athletic Commission that prohibited masked wrestlers because it was kind of like they would equate it to like masked bandits and stuff or whatever. I mean, they just didn't want people hiding identity or whatever. And so it was lobbied upon for a long time because they wanted Mascaras to be at the Garden, and they finally got the waiver. But ironically, the other masked wrestlers like El Olympico at the time and the Russians. There was a tag team called the Russians. They wore these masks that were cut out in the front so you could see their whole face.
Huh.
And even after Mascaras came in, for the longest period of time, other masked wrestlers still had that open face mask.
It was just like a net in the front?
Not even a net. It was just an open face. It was kind of like almost like a big shower cap. Or something.
Yeah, but I say it's just a weird hat at that point.
It was ugly. It was ugly.
Huh.
Because El Olympico wasn't the most handsome guy. But Mascaras, they got the waiver for, and then the law kind of changed after time. But yeah, New York State Athletic Commission had a lot of very strict rules. I mean, no women wrestling until 72. And Mascaras made his debut, I believe it was December 72, against the Spoiler, who was ironically a masked wrestler who wasn't allowed to wear his mask.
I mean, so that really kind of comes into play with, like, there was no internet back then, so luchadors could get away with that, right?
Yeah.
Wrestling in New York and coming back and not having that spoil their
well, they wouldn't come in. I mean, there was nobody coming in, no luchadors. El Olympico was kind of a jobber guy that was there for several years. He was kind of a mainstay. And then the rugged Russians, on TV, they'd wear their mask, but at the Garden, they couldn't. In other venues, they were allowed to.
Wow.
All this stuff is covered on my other podcast, It's called Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden. So each month, we talk about a show that I went to 50 years ago. And so we covered that Mascaras one, and it's really a fascinating show. I mean, if anyone has ever checked it out or you want to check it out, I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes conversation about what was going on at Madison Square Garden during that time period 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's a little sneak peek to the kind of information you can get.
Yeah, the March 26th episode that's coming out within the next few days is the night I met Freddie Blassie for the first time, Andre the Giant's debut at Madison Square Garden. Mascaras was on the show before that, February. But yeah, I mean, it's just like something I really enjoy to go about 50 years. It takes me a little bit longer sometimes to remember some stuff. But this was also the time period in 1973 that I was filming matches at the Garden as a kid with my little camera. So anyway, it's a fascinating show if you really want to know history. If you're still alive, that was around back then. You might find it entertaining. Matt Memories, Madison Square Garden.
Fred from Brooklyn calls in, asks about Mr. Wonderful, Flair and WCW, Mr. Perfect. It's all pretty, is Wonderful coming back? And you said no. I was also the first time that I heard someone on your one of your callers say they noticed one of his arms looks a lot smaller than the other one. And you talked about that.
Atrophy, yeah.
Yeah. It does bring us to the last clip, although you have a few more callers after that. But for chronological sake, we should play it. This is Brian from Long Beach.
Ah, yes.
And this
Brian
is
last.
We're going to go to Long Beach, and we're going to speak to Brian now. Brian, are you there?
Yeah, how's it going?
How's it going with you?
I got 3 quick questions.
Okay.
Number one, is it true Buddy Landel's now a minister?
Buddy Landel is going into the ministry, yes.
Oh, man. Is this the first time on Monday Night Raw that Vince McMahon was actually noticed as the president of Titan Sports?
To my knowledge, as far as being mentioned as a CEO of Titan Sports, yes.
Okay, and is it true the rumors that the reason why Maximum was originally going to be switched with the Cheetah Kid and all that was because he was caught sleeping with Tatanka's wife?
I have no idea about that. 212-477-5610. I will not even begin to speculate in that scenario.
Yep. Yeah, Brian was getting a little testy. Brian was pushing buttons because, a spoiler alert on the next shows that we review, I actually hang up on him for a very inappropriate question he asked about Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Well, you hung up on him there.
I did.
It. Yeah. You're like, oh, not answering that. Not talking about that. What are you doing?
I wonder why. I wonder what caused him to turn.
The turn. I think listening
Russo.
to him,
He was a Russo listener. He used to love Russo's show more than mine, probably.
I think that he was getting really smart to the business stuff. I think he was making friends in the business, and I think he was trying to get. I don't think he was trying to push your button so much as trying to get confirmation on stuff. Is this true? And viewed you as a valid source. I don't know.
But he was asking about affairs, and then he gets a little bit even more kind of graphic. Well, not graphic, but in the question that he asked was really inappropriate.
Yeah, huh?
On the next episode.
Well, maybe he was starting to. Hey, John's not as good as Vince. Let me ask the questions that people know they can go to Vince for, or whatever. I don't know. Remember Vince's show?
Yeah, but were those rumors? Why would he say about Tatanka's wife? I mean, why would he? Unless you're reading it in the sheets or something, and maybe you wanted affirmation. I don't know, but I don't even know if that would be. I don't know. This is a new element for me now in the history, because when Brian started calling, several weeks or months ago, even when we heard his voice for the first time, I thought it's really cool. But now listening back to it, I wonder what he's going to do now. What is he going to ask now?
Yeah. Now when you hear Brian from Long Beach, you go, "Oh no."
Well, 2 weeks in a row, so there's something going on.
Yeah, something's up. Something is up, huh? The Max Moon he's talking about was the one after Conan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
because we know Conan got fired because he just didn't show up.
Yeah, because he got tired of lugging that shit around, from what he said.
Yeah. So
I just stopped showing up.
Yep,
and he did.
Flag it. The rest of the calls, though, you got Joe from Brooklyn asking about Jake, Legion of Doom. You had Pushpack from New Jersey. You recognized right away. As soon as he says something, you go, no, I got to stop you there. How did you get that name? And he's like, I'm Indian. That's what my parents named me. But you remembered him. He'd called before during a Missy Hyatt segment. But he simply asked if the NWA and WCW were merging, and you talked about the satellite thing. Pete from Eatontown, not for the first time, that Jake will be a no-show. Because you keep going like, we got Jake, we got Jake. And so Pete Cousin goes, this won't be the first time Jake no-shows.
Right. His rep was already out there.
Yeah.
I guess the callers, I mean, this was really it was a show that was just filled with callers.
Yeah.
Because of Jake doing whatever Jake was doing and not showing up.
But it was another one of those moments that I've talked about before where I feel like that as much as you filled up with guests as much as you could, I felt like you were really happiest when you were just chatting with a bunch of callers about wrestling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know this. Oh, I'd love to tell you about that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I enjoyed it. I always love taking callers. That's why I wish the show was longer.
Yeah. He does end up saying he loves the Cactus Jack as a Horseman idea. He thinks Mr. Wonderful would have made a better narcissist than Lex Luger, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you both said you were pretty unimpressed by Lex. Andy is a second show listening, and he was at the Universal Wrestling Superstars show and was asking if Jake's a heel or face because of the match he had there versus the match he had coming up. And you says it depends on the side of bed he wakes up on.
Yeah.
And King of the Ring just got announced, and so you guys speculate it's a whole gimmick just for Lawler. Let's see. You mentioned a couple times to call Donna for ECW tickets.
Mm-hmm. My sister.
That was your sister.
Or WNYG. Disrupt her day.
And you thanked Jake at one point for no showing because you had a really good time with all the callers.
There you go.
Yeah. And you said maybe next week. Although, this was one. Greg from Brooklyn says he's a new lister. He found you in the Daily News. Said, and you said, too bad the Slammer himself wouldn't plug it. But that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the Slammer?
Hank Winicky was his name. He had a weekly wrestling column in the New York Daily News, which was widely read. And he got cooperation. He was tied in, was friendly with WWF, and once all the scandals and stuff he wouldn't promote anything that I was doing.
Hmm.
So I took out an ad for the show,
Oh.
and I took out an ad in the Daily News about the show, and I ran that for several weeks, I think. A little box ad, but it was I made sure it was positioned right next to his column.
That's cool. Yeah, that's funny because you did say that. You're like, that's the marketing money paying off right there.
Yeah, and I had the Slammer on my show in the first year or second year of the show, and he'd promote some of the conventions, and I met him. He came to the conventions, but he was not really a wrestling insider per se. He worked at the Daily News, but he was not really employed or was even active in the scene. He was just doing the column, and he had some friends like George Napolitano and Blackjack Brown and others that he'd get information from. Because it was kind of a shoot style column in a lot of ways.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, you seemed annoyed, so I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, I'm still annoyed at it, probably.
Get him on. Slam him. He did ask, though, whatever happened, because he talked about a lot of Memphis wrestling and says, whatever happened to Larry Latham? And you said you have no idea. I looked it up, and he was Moondog's spot at the time in Memphis. Okay. So he was like the tag champ. Which I thought was also kind of funny because Donnie been covering the Moondogs in a bunch the weeks prior.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one I got here is Dave from Englishtown was calling asking about, he heard that Sean Mooney was leaving. And I just thought that was cool. Just Sean Mooney's a local guy out here. Always been good to me too. But yeah, you said you were wondering to see if he was going to pop up in WCW and take over JR's spot.
Yeah, Sean was one of those good ones, and I was wondering if he was going to take over JR's spot at the time. He was a very, very talented guy, as you know, and yeah, Sean and I worked together in 1982 with Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
that was another little connection from Sean. But I always liked him. What a great guy, great freaking guy.
But he's talked about it before. He left because the steroid stuff was just getting too hot, and he didn't know if it was gonna hurt his other stuff.
Right.
But that's it. That's your two shows.
Yep,
a lot of callers. Which made for kind of a fun listen.
Yeah, it was. And of course, if you want to hear the entire episodes unedited and hear all the hilarity and all the callers, just go to patreon.com/John Arezzi. Spoiler, next week is going to be a real fun one. It's going to be really fun because I uploaded those, and we have that first appearance by Jake Roberts. We go into a lot of what we did at the Tommy D shows and his hospital visit, and in pretty much detail, I talk about what happened in the hospital, which is kind of cool. Nikolai Volkov joins us, and Cactus Jack joins us for the entire show on WEVD. And also, speaking of listeners, Fred the Elephant Boy is in the studio. It's a good one.
On a mic?
Yes.
Nice.
He was almost co-host. It's hilarious next week.
That's going to be hard to clip.
It is going to be fun. And Ski makes an appearance next week.
Well,
so it's going to be a good one.
Maybe he was the guy you couldn't shake, and that's why he's there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But he's a beloved guy, man. Ski. I miss him. I do miss him.
Yeah.
Yes, Marsh. Anyway, another great week. Sorry, no guest as far as wrestler goes. DDP, no show. Not even a response, or not even a no-show. Just like an FU.
Yeah, you must have stiffed him on a payday or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All I know is that he never kind of warmed up to me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe because I was just big fat guy, And he's helped a lot of fat people, right?
That's true.
But back in the
should have
day,
reached out with a promo code for his DDPY. Just said, you sign up for this, and then I'll do the thing.
Right. Yeah, but he's helped a lot of people. And like I said, hey, listen, sometimes people just, it's life. You can't dwell on shit. And I do not. I'm much too old for that these days. Yeah. But Marsh, I want to thank you. I know you've been tremendously busy with all the projects that you got going on right now. So, and you have, all kinds of great stuff in your life happening. So, very happy for you with everything that's going on with you right now. So
a lot of good stuff, a lot of happy stuff going on, and then also preparing for WrestleCon at the end of the month. So I'll be out there. If anybody sees me, come say hi.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna be a fun trip. WrestleMania goes Hollywood, man, and WrestleCon and all the other shit that's going on out there. It's gonna be a good place to be.
Yep.
As always, where could people find you on the social media channels?
Yeah, you can find me at Ref Marsh on Twitter and Marsh Ref on Instagram. And outside of that, WrestlingOnTheRocks.com is just where I keep a lot of my fun side stuff. So
awesome.
You check me out over there.
Hey, I have to make an announcement. If you want to follow me on social media, follow our YouTube, our Facebook, all you got to do right now is this. Go to linktree.com/John Arezzi. And that's it.
Boom.
It's all there. There are 10 links there. So, maybe we could put that up with a graphic or something. And it's even a QR code, right?
Yep.
QR code now, too.
Yeah. So anyone who's watching it, they've got the QR code right there in the link.
Yeah, so scan it. If you're watching it on YouTube, scan it, and there you go. It's rudimentary right now. I'm going to upgrade to the pro level so I could kind of make it a little bit look fancier. But the basic stuff is there. All the links for everything that we do. So linktree.com/John Arezzi. And don't forget, even our Patreon is on there. So it's patreon.com/John Arezzi. Shameless plug, and people are like, he's always promoting Patreon, Well, it's like that actually does help the cost for producing the show.
Yeah.
That's where the money goes.
Yeah.
It goes to distribute the show. It goes for your services. So we need that support. I mean, that really helps us. No one's looking to get rich here.
Yeah, no. And I think we got another video call coming up, right?
Yeah, we have a Patreon. By the time this comes out for patrons, which will be this coming Sunday, which is on March 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th. On the 20th, patrons who are listening to the show early, you'll be able to join us on Zoom. So go to patreon.com. There's a post. And then if you want to be a part of it, I send you a link the day of. And that's next Monday. Marsh, I don't know if you can make it or not, but
I'll be able to. Yeah, this one I'll be back.
That'll be fun. So, just want to thank you again, and that's going to about wrap up this edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. And like I said, linktree.com/John Arezzi. Just look for me there, and that's where all the links are. And don't forget to check out the sister podcast, Madison Square Garden, the memories from Madison Square Garden from 50 years ago. That show is co-hosted by Tim Poutre, and it is written and researched by Richie Garcia. And thanks, as always, to Marsh, our producer and creative director. Thanks to the Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pires and Joe Holloway, and all the patrons for your support, helping with the production costs for this show. Until next week, when we relive more history with you, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.